Listen up. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to the podcast participants, and not to any participant's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. You know, for fun. So lighten up and enjoy. Oh, hello there, my friends. I am Sawtooth Frank, and you are listening to the Soft Serve podcast. On this week's episode, we're going to have a spring theme. I'm going to talk to you about some spring things, because spring is coming up in a couple of days. That is meteorological spring, so we're going to talk about some stuff related to spring. Mostly how horrible spring is, believe it or not. It's one of the worst times of year, and I will tell you why once we get into the show, after the intro music.
The Soft Serve Podcast.
Creamy, delicious ideas without the creepy truck. Oh yeah, baby. I guess I played the wrong intro music again. You know, when I do these shows alone, I tend to play the absolute zero version of my theme song, because I am your absolute zero. But that was the other theme music that I typically reserve for when we have guests on, or when Stomping Jen joins me on the podcast. But it is just me alone, and I should have played the other intro music. But you know, from week to week, I guess it's going to be a little bit of intro music bingo. You never know what you're going to get. Podcast intros are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Right? It's exciting. You don't know what intro song I'm going to play. That's amazing. I'm going to give myself one of these. Brilliant, Sawtooth. Brilliant. Well, like I said before the intro music, I am your host, Sawtooth Frank, and you're listening to the Soft Serve podcast. And I'm going to talk to you this week about how horrible spring is, and how much I hate spring, and why I hate spring, and why it's the worst season ever. Now, I'll admit, my feelings on spring have softened a little bit in recent years, as I've gotten older and I've become less cold tolerant. I like spring a little bit more because it heralds the coming of the warmer weather. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I first want to start off just with a politics update. It'll be short, I promise. This one will be really, really short. You know, I've been thinking since our last update on the war with Iran that Trump launched, his war of choice, that there's been a lot of talk in the last week from the Trump administration about how their whole thing is about showing, obtaining peace through strength, right? And how they need to demonstrate to the world how much power we have to obtain peace. I want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about why the peace through strength narrative is total bullshit. Okay? I think I've said this on a couple of other episodes where I was talking about the war with Iran, that I'm not sitting here defending the Iranian regime, right? There is obviously many, many problems with the theocratic, oppressive leadership of that country. And it had been, in a lot of ways, holding the Middle East and the world hostage for the last almost 50 years. So, do I think it's a good thing that we might see an Iranian people freed from a totalitarian, theocratic, oppressive regime? Yes. Like I've said on other podcast episodes, do I think the Trump administration has gone about this war in the correct way? No. And you can go back and listen to my arguments about the war and how I feel the Trump administration has totally mishandled the launching of this war. And so far, 2.5, almost 3 weeks in, the conducting of this war. I don't think it's going very good, to be honest with you. So, back to what I wanted to talk to you about, which is the Trump administration's peace through strength narrative being total and utter bullshit, and why we should call bullshit on it when we hear it. I think, first and foremost, the most obvious point to make is that their philosophy of peace through strength produced war rather than preventing it.
Fake news.
The core concept of peace through strength is that military power deters conflict. And now we find ourselves in an active war with Iran rather than having prevented one.
Wrong.
And after the Trump administration's so-called show of strength by striking Iranian targets, we've seen the conflict escalate. Iran is attacking its neighbors, and it sure looks like the war is beginning to spiral out of control. So, if a peace through strength philosophy worked as a deterrent, then this conflict that we're seeing in Iran would not have escalated into all-out open warfare, in my opinion. Total bullshit. So another thing we've seen, right, as evidence that peace through strength doesn't work, is that we are seeing a triggering of economic instability across the globe instead of stability. And I talked about this last week at length, about increased gas prices due to destabilized global energy markets. Oil prices have jumped above $100 per barrel, and it looks like they're going to stay there now, with the Strait of Hormuz being almost totally shut down, and foreign nations ignoring Donald Trump's pleas for assistance in keeping the strait open. Now, one also has to question the peace through strength narrative of the United States of America if Donald Trump is out there begging other countries to come and lend a hand militarily? Are the attacks on Iran, have they not been effective enough in terms of bringing about peace? What's going on? Why do we need all of these other countries to help? So something doesn't add up there. So we have increasing global economic instability. I just mentioned this, right? The peace through strength narrative is total bullshit in that it has almost totally failed to secure broad international support. You know, strong deterrences are supposed to include credible alliances like with NATO. And you would think that other countries in the region, or who are closer to the Middle East than we are, like certain European countries, would be rushing to help, but they're not. So if the strategy of peace through strength were convincing to other people and stabilizing, I think our allies would certainly be more unified, rather than the reluctance they seem to be showing us. The peace through strength philosophy that Donald Trump is crowing about has led to regional escalation. So if peace through strength worked, we wouldn't be seeing this war spreading. Another weakness of the peace through strength narrative, especially as we see it being applied to Iran, is that it is entirely likely that this war and these attacks on Iran are going to strengthen the hardliners. While much of the Iranian population did not like the Ayatollah Khomeini and the theocratic, oppressive rulers of their country, there was a sizable population of religious zealots and hardliners in Iran who did support them. I think we may end up seeing a consolidation of the hardline support in Iran. And what could this mean? This could mean if those people are able to stay in power, or God forbid, even more hardline people take over the power structures of Iran, I think it's going to reduce and minimize the chance of reform and diplomacy inside of Iran. This is a big problem. Right? It's the old metaphor, you cut off the head of the snake and another one appears. We saw this in Iraq. We removed the Saddam Hussein regime only to have religious zealots and terrorists take over that country for a period of time, killing thousands and thousands of our troops. Another thing I think we're going to see that is total bullshit in relation to this peace through strength narrative is that we're going to see an undermining of diplomacy, right? We just talked about this. And I talked about this for 20 minutes to half an hour in an episode a couple of weeks ago about how this military action was not taken with a clear strategy or sufficient authorization by the people of the United States through Congress.
You're not a nice person.
It's my argument that peace through strength should, in theory, use military power to support diplomacy, not replace it. And I think in the Donald Trump world of peace through strength, diplomacy is not necessary. All that matters is killing people and showing people that you are willing to kill them. And if you ever watch one of Whiskey Pete Hegseth's press conferences, you will see exactly that narrative being peddled. All we should care about is killing people. We don't care about the collateral damage or who gets hurt in the process. All that matters is that we appear strong by killing people with our weapons. And I think that is just wrong and total bullshit. And we should be opposing the Trump peace through strength doctrine at all turns and speaking out against it. Finally, I will point out that the Trump version of peace through strength absolutely contradicts and undermines the traditional meaning of that doctrine, peace through strength. I've talked a little bit about it in this rant. Historically speaking, peace through strength has meant maintaining overwhelming military power to deter your adversaries without actually fighting major wars. So we see that this launching of a large-scale attack and bombing campaign in Iran has suggested that deterrence has already failed. And this whole peace through strength narrative that Trump and his cabinet full of maggots are peddling is total and utter bullshit. And just like a lot of authoritarian regimes, the Trump administration likes to peddle and doublespeak. They like to lie. They like to claim one thing while doing another. And it's up to us to be aware of that and speak out against it. So the next time you hear somebody talking about how Donald Trump is about peace through strength, now you can contradict them and talk back against them, okay? All right, let's get on to the substance, shall we? Let's get on to it then. Let's talk about spring. I said at the start of this episode that I hated spring. And that's not entirely true. I have become more tolerant of spring in recent years as I've gotten older because I don't do as well in the cold. I don't know what that's about. When I was younger, I could walk around outside in below freezing weather with nothing but a wool sweater on and be totally fine. No hat, no gloves. It's like I didn't even feel the cold. Nowadays, I am cold all the time. Like, I don't know if that's because I'm old or what, but I'm much more comfortable in the warm weather than I used to be as a kid. So, spring for me is more about the heralding of the warmer weather. And so I look on it more favorably in that respect. Now, I'm recording this episode, let's mark the date, on Monday, March 16th. And spring, meteorological spring, or is it meteorological or astronomical spring? Maybe the spring equinox, I really don't know. But what my Googling tells me is that we enter spring here on March 20th. So that's in a couple of days. And before we enter spring, we have, I think, the first of what we think of as the spring holidays that we celebrate in the United States. So there's like a whole bunch of holidays that happen in the spring, obviously. And the first one of those is St. Patrick's Day. That happens on March 17th. Now, I have a problem with St. Patrick's Day. As with most things, over here in the United States, we've taken a cultural tradition and have twisted it and warped it and perverted it. And that's what we've done with St. Patrick's Day. And there are some significant differences in the way St. Patrick's Day is celebrated in the United States versus the way it's celebrated in Ireland. So St. Patrick's Day is a holiday that is supposed to commemorate St. Patrick, obviously, who is the patron saint who was credited with bringing Christianity to Ireland. And over time, the holiday has really evolved and changed in the way it's celebrated between the United States and Ireland. So in Ireland, St. Patrick's Day generally was a religious holiday that honored the saint, St. Patrick, and celebrated Irish heritage. And it's a holiday that is deeply tied to national Irish identity, particularly after the rise of Irish nationalism that happened in the late 1800s and throughout the 20th century. So in the United States, St. Patrick's Day is celebrated more as a observance of Irish American identity and ethnic pride. And it became really popular in big cities that had large Irish immigrant populations, such as Boston, New York City, Chicago, and over time, the St. Patrick's Day holiday in the United States has evolved into what many people think of as a general party holiday, which is often celebrated by people who have no or very little Irish ancestry. So, St. Patrick's Day is celebrated both in Ireland and in the United States, but the reasons people celebrate it are very different, even to this day. We just mentioned this. In the United States, the St. Patrick's Day holiday has really taken on a party atmosphere, characterized by drinking, beer and whiskey. We see bars hosting St. Patrick's Day events, encouraging people to wear costumes and green accessories. You see people wearing Celtics uniforms, green hats, and in some cities they even dye the entire, a city that has a river, like the Chicago River, they'll dye that entire river green. In Ireland, celebrations for St. Patrick's Day tend to focus a little more on music, cultural events, more subdued parades, and the major event in Ireland around St. Patrick's Day is the St. Patrick's Day Festival in Dublin. And that typically includes concerts, performances, and really focuses on historical themes of Irish national identity. People drink in and around the St. Patrick's Day holiday in Ireland, but it's not as central to the celebratory events as it is in the United States. So, in America here, we focus on the revelry and spectacle, whereas, Irish celebrations of St. Patrick's Day are more focused on culture and nationalism, right? The symbols around all of that. What else do I want to tell you about St. Patrick's Day? Well, two more things, I think. In the United States, the holiday is really heavily commercialized, like most holidays here in the United States, right? Think of a holiday in the United States that isn't commercialized. Maybe one, Arbor Day. That's it. That's the only holiday that's not commercialized in the United States. All the rest are Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, the 4th of July. But not Arbor Day. We hate the trees for some reason. Well, the commercialization of St. Patrick's Day in the United States is obscene. We have St. Patrick's Day themed drinks, merchandise, we talked about that, the hats, green articles of clothing, advertising campaigns everywhere for St. Patrick's Day. Remember McDonald's Shamrock Shake? I remember that. I loved the Shamrock Shake as a kid. I always looked forward to that. Lots of bar promotions to get people in to drink. Whereas in Ireland, the commercialization is a little more reserved, a little more curated, and, more focused on actual Irish culture. Again, a lot of the celebration in Ireland and the commercialization is around emphasizing Irish music, dances, Gaelic, the language of Ireland, and, generally the heritage of the Irish people. But, like I said, once we get our grubby fucking hands on something here in America, right, we warp it towards consumer spectacle. It's so depressing. But the Irish, they're attempting to keep their holiday sort of about cultural authenticity, but also celebrating. And the last thing I'll say about this, okay, is obviously because we're Americans, we like to take things and exaggerate them and focus on the commercial symbols that can be exploited. So in the United States, St. Patrick's Day is associated with leprechauns, shamrocks, green beer, and just like generally cartoonish depictions and imagery associated with Irish culture. In Ireland, the celebrations are more focused on, like we said earlier, they're more, authentic and traditional cultural symbols, such as traditional Irish music, Gaelic culture, the historical narratives. So, there you go. Now, I know this is coming out after you probably have celebrated St. Patrick's Day. So, look, I'm not here to shame you. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get you to think a little bit. I didn't celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I'm going to tell you that. I never saw a reason to. I didn't ever understand why people celebrated it. Like once I became an adult, it didn't seem to me like something I wanted to celebrate or had any reason to celebrate. I remember being a kid in elementary school being forced to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. We'd have to cut out little shamrocks and decorate them. They made us make leprechaun traps. I remember believing in leprechauns. Like I literally believed in those little fuckers. And we would make little traps at school and take them home and try to catch leprechauns. I mentioned the Shamrock Shake before. Like that was like my main association with St. Patrick's Day, was the fucking Shamrock Shake. I loved that goddamn thing. It was like drinking a big cold glass of sweet milky chalk. I don't know if they still have the Shamrock Shake. I wonder. Well, if you're listening to this and you have had a Shamrock Shake or know whether or not they've had a Shamrock Shake recently at McDonald's, let me know. I'd love to hear about that. I'd also like to hear about the ways you were forced to celebrate St. Patrick's Day in school when you were a kid. I wonder if your experiences reflect mine. You know, I'm a Gen Xer. I'm 52 years old. They may not do that shit anymore. You know, I don't think it's good that if they've gotten rid of thinking about or observing St. Patrick's Day in some way, but all that other cartoony, hokey, culture bastardizing shit, though, I think it's pretty good that it would be pretty good if they got away from that, but who knows. My kids have been out of grade school for a long fucking time, too. I have, you know, a kid in college and one working their way in that direction pretty soon. So I don't know what kids do anymore. I'll be honest with you. All right. We talked about St. Patrick's Day as one of the spring holidays. And sorry for that long diversion. I thought it was important to talk about it because it did happen the week I'm recording. Well, it's actually happening tomorrow, March 17th. I'm recording this again on Monday, March 16th, but after you listen to this, it will be in the rear view. It will be in the past. So, what other spring holidays do we have? Well, let's look and let's talk about it. We have Easter coming up. Okay, that's typically in March or April. That happens in the spring, right? And if you don't know what Easter is, that's probably the holiest Christian holiday, which celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I think I may end up doing an Easter special. So last year around Easter, I did a stand-up set. My first one in many, many years. And my material was very Easter focused. So I may come on the podcast and perform that stand-up set for you. Let's see what happens. So let me know if you want to hear that. If you do want to hear that, leave me a comment on social media and convince me that I should do that, because when I did the stand-up set, it was not well received. The people in the audience did not appreciate my X-rated Jesus humor. One old guy got up and stormed out of the venue in disgust, which I personally take as a point of pride. But that man was not happy with my material. So if you want to hear that material, let me know. Okay, reach out and let me know. Convince me that it's a good idea. Otherwise, I just may take the week off. Okay, other spring holidays that we have. Passover. That's a Jewish holiday that celebrates the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt. So Jewish families across the world during Passover, they have 2 nights where they have ceremonial meals that commemorate the liberation from slavery in Egypt. Let's see, we also have, and Passover can happen in March or April, either one of those months. Then we have Earth Day, which happens on April 22nd of every year. And on Earth Day, we generally focus on celebrating and observing environmental awareness, conservation, climate action, all things that the Trump administration wants you to believe are useless and hoaxes. But I like to at least think about this planet we live on Earth Day. I'm not going to claim that I observe Earth Day by any stretch of the imagination. But I like to think about the Earth on Earth Day. The fact that we live on this rocky, watery planet hurtling through the cold vacuum of space. Spaceship Earth! Passengers on Spaceship Earth, unite. We are together on this ship. Okay. Other holidays spring holidays that people celebrate over here. Cinco de Mayo. Oh, look, another holiday that another culture celebrates that the United States and Americans took and twisted into a drinking holiday. Big surprise. That happens on May 5th. Cinco de Mayo means the 5th of May. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention May the 4th. Do you know what holiday we celebrate on May the 4th? It's a celebration of the first Star Wars film, May the 4th be with you. It is a celebration of Star Wars. Now, on the 6th of May, there's another Star Wars observance called Revenge of the Sixth. Right, which is a play on words of the Revenge of the Sith movie. Which I think is the only Star Wars movie in the George Lucas prequel trilogy that was, I don't want to say it was good, but it had some redeeming qualities. I really enjoyed some of the stuff with Anakin Skywalker and his turn to Darth Vader in that film. I thought it was done pretty well. Okay, that's May the 6th. And then other spring holidays we have Mother's Day, which happens on the second Sunday in May. And then finally Memorial Day, which is the last Monday in May. Now, Memorial Day pisses me off because people confuse Memorial Day with Veterans Day all the time and vice versa. It drives me fucking crazy. On Memorial Day, we have people thanking veterans for their service, right? And that's not what Memorial Day is about. It's about honoring people who died in service. We don't thank the people who died. We honor them. We remember them. It's not something we thank people for. Because guess what? I'm a veteran. And you know what? If I had died serving my country, I don't want you to fucking thank me. I want to be alive. I don't want to be thanked for being dead. It's not what we do. We don't thank people for dying. You stupid fucks. We honor their sacrifices. That's what we're supposed to do, not thank them for dying. And on Veterans Day, that's the day you can thank people for their service. That happens in November. And on Veterans Day, we don't honor no, just never mind. Forget it. I said everything I wanted to say about Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Okay, that's it. That's all the spring holidays. And if I forgot one, fuck you, I don't care. All right, let's get on to the meat of it. That all took way longer than I anticipated. So, I wanted to tell you about why spring is so horrible. Why it's the worst of the seasons. Let's review the seasons, shall we? I don't know where to start because it's kind of a circle, right? It's a loop, the progression of the seasons. But let's start with... how do we do this? Okay, let's start with summer. We have summer. Does everyone know what summer is? That's when it gets hot. Then we have fall. That comes after summer, I'm pretty sure. Then we have winter, which comes after fall. And winter is ending here right now in Massachusetts where I live. And thank God, because it was a fucking brutal, horrible winter. And then after winter, we have spring. Now, often... I'm sorry I'm clearing my throat so much, people. I always end up recording this podcast right after dinner, and it fucks with my throat. All 50 of you who listen to this on a regular basis will have to bear with me. Okay. So, spring is traditionally marketed in a way that sort of betrays its deadliness. Betrays how horrible of a season it is. With spring, we see flowers, sunshine, and the whole idea of new beginnings. The birds come back. Little bunny rabbits are hopping around the yard. Life is returning to the cold, barren land. But the truth about spring is a lot more messy. It's a lot stranger. It's more unsettling. And I'm going to tell you why that is. Okay? Now, the first thing to know about spring is that it is the absolute, hands down, deadliest season for allergies. That's right. We're not just talking about runny noses and watery eyes. Allergies aren't just annoying, right? They can seriously impact people's health. And what does that? What is causing the allergies? Trees. Trees like oak trees, birch trees, and maple trees. They release massive clouds of pollen into the air. And if you don't know what pollen is, it's tree cum. It's tree semen, tree jizz. The trees are ejaculating all over us, trying to impregnate other trees. Now, when the pollen is really bad, like you can see that shit floating in the air, and it can reach a density of thousands of grains of pollen per cubic meter of air. Like when you walk out in the morning and you look at your car and it's covered with yellow or green or like brown dust in the spring, that's tree cum. A tree ejaculated all over your car and you breathe it into your lungs. And when your lungs get filled with tree cum, do you know what happens? You get severe allergies. People can get asthma attacks, sinus infections, sleep disruptions. People can die from these things. So allergies are no joke. No joke at all. Now, another thing we need to be concerned about, this is going to blow your mind in the spring, is something called thunderstorm asthma, which hospitalizes thousands of people a year. Now, thunderstorm asthma happens when thunderstorms shatter grains of pollen into microscopic particles. So people inhale them deep into their lungs, and it can cause massive asthma attacks across a geographical area within hours. And this can lead to people having to go to the hospitals, overwhelming EMS systems, so like ambulances and fire trucks, and it kills people. Thunderstorm asthma. You know, I thought I knew everything there was to fucking worry about in the world. Now I have to worry about thunderstorm asthma? Holy fucking shit. So, you know, I know feels cool to go outside in a thunderstorm in the spring and feel the cool air on your skin and the warm rain pouring down from the heavens. But don't fucking do it. Do not do it. Thunderstorm asthma might happen. Now, another thing to tell you about the spring. This is horrible. It's a time of death. We think of spring as a time of rebirth, of renewal, but it's not. Yes, spring is the largest mass breeding system or season in most ecosystems, okay? But there is so much death in spring that occurs because so many animals are fucking and having babies. Birds, they lay more eggs that can survive. They push little baby birds out of the nest, and those little tiny naked baby birds, they fall dozens if not hundreds of feet to their deaths. Predator activity spikes in the spring. Also, with all of those new little babies being born everywhere, the birds, the bunnies, the foxes, the predators come out and they have a fucking smorgasbord. I once had a litter of foxes that was born under my shed in my yard. They were the cutest little fucking things. 5 little baby foxes. Every morning, they would come out, they would romp around in the morning sun. One day, we came home, and we found them all with their heads ripped off, lying in the backyard under the kids' playset. Do you know what did that? A fucking red-tailed hawk. A predator. Death from the sky. The weather also kills lots of animals in the spring, especially newborn animals. Spring likes to play games. It likes to pretend that it's here to stay, that it has pushed winter back. But we get something in the spring called late frosts, where it can ice overnight and get really cold. And that can kill a lot of newborn animals. And so in the spring, for a lot of species that are out there, more than half of their younglings die in the spring. So that's just something to think about. Spring is a time of death, not renewal, not rebirth. It's a time of death. Another thing that happens in spring is that the tick populations explode. So as soon as it starts warming up, the ticks come out from their winter dormancy. They don't fucking die in the winter. These motherfuckers hibernate. They go dormant. And they come out and they start latching onto dogs, onto people, and they spread diseases, ticks, and they kill people. You've heard of Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The spring and early summer are the absolute most dangerous time for ticks. There's even a tick. It's called the Lone Star tick. This motherfucker, if it bites you, it can make you allergic to meat. You'll never eat a fucking steak or a chicken wing again. Think about that. And I don't believe that everything in the ecosystem has a place. Fuck ticks. Kill them all. Every last one of them. We don't need them. Leeches are fine. Leave the leeches. They live in ponds and lakes. And I don't go in ponds and lakes. But ticks are everywhere. You step out your fucking door, you'll get a tick on you. When I was in the army, okay, I knew this guy who got a tick on his balls. And he asked me to help him get it off. That's another reason I hate ticks. I had to take one off of somebody's balls once. Can you imagine that? Oh my God, I'm still traumatized from it. Why did I even talk about this? That memory came rushing in. Oh my Lord. Okay, another thing about spring is it is the peak season for animal attacks. So in the spring, animals become more territorial and aggressive because they're breeding, they're fucking, they're looking for mates. And they're protecting their babies. So deer are protecting their baby deers, which are called fawns. I don't know if you knew that. Geese attacks go up because people inadvertently walk near their nests. Bears come out of hibernation and they're really fucking hungry and they're looking for food. And you look like food to a bear, in case you didn't know that. And so in the suburbs, we have a dramatic increase in animal attacks. Now, where I live out in the country, there's lots of room and lots of woods. And animal attacks aren't as common. But they are more common in the suburbs in the spring. So watch out, people. Watch the fuck out. Another thing people, I think, are not aware of is that our mental health can get worse in the spring. I think most of us assume that winter is the peak time for worst moods. But spring has a very disturbing mental health pattern associated with it. Now this is terrible. I'm going to say that. I'm not even going to try to make any jokes about this. There's some research that shows that suicide rates peak in the late spring rather than winter. And some of the conditions that have been linked to those increases in spring suicides are major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and some of the theories about why this happens is that with the changing of the season, right, it can cause changes in the way we respond in terms of our hormones, right? Our sleep cycles might be disrupted. We have social pressures on us to feel happier, and we may not be feeling happier. So, and I will say this, as somebody who has been in therapy for the last 18 plus years, if you're dealing with anything in terms of mental health and you're feeling an uptick in bad feelings or feel like you need help, please go get it. There's no shame in getting help for your mental health. I am a big proponent. There was a time in my life where I needed to go on antidepressants for a period of time. And I've been in talk therapy now for 18 plus years. And it's helped me tremendously. I will say I did enjoy being on antidepressants for a period of time, because one of the side effects of them is delayed ejaculation. Now, for some people, that may seem like a curse, but it was a side effect that I enjoyed. Now, don't tell Stomping Jen this, because, I enjoyed the fact, how do I say this delicately? Good grief. I enjoyed the fact that it drew out our amorous activity longer than otherwise it might have been drawn out, so that I could get to the pinnacle that the antidepressants were delaying me from reaching. Yes, I am trying to see the upside in being on antidepressants. Let's move on, shall we? Oh, here's one. That melting snow that you're so glad is leaving us because it's getting warmer in the spring. Well, guess what it's hiding? Garbage. Dead animals. Road salt. Dog shit. Chemical runoff. They often refer to the melting snow in the spring as the spring thaw pollution. That's how bad melting snow is for you. It's full of garbage, brother, garbage. It's awful. So I see melting snow and I see poison. That's what I see. Oh, here's another thing. So when spring comes around, another horrible, deadly pest comes back. Want to guess what it is? That's right, the fucking mosquito. And they have a field day in spring. They love the standing water from the melting snow and all of the spring rain. They get in that water and they fuck and they lay mosquito eggs and their little babies hatch. And mosquitoes spread lots of diseases. West Nile virus, the Zika virus. And just within a couple of weeks, once they get going, their populations explode. They multiply by like 100 times within just a matter of weeks. I fucking hate mosquitoes. I don't like going outside at night because of mosquitoes. I don't like going to fireworks in the summer because of mosquitoes. I hate mosquitoes. Don't ever ask me to go anywhere at night where there are mosquitoes. I won't do it. Okay, this is happening literally right now. Another horrible thing about spring is that the storms tend to be the most violent of the year. So in North America, where I live, and in Massachusetts, spring is the peak season for thunderstorms, hailstorms. That's when like little pellets of ice fall out of the sky and fuck up your car and all your other shit. And in other parts of the country, spring is peak tornado season time. We've had tornadoes here where I live in Massachusetts. And guess when it happened? Spring! So watch out for the storms, people. So, the other and sort of last thing about why spring is terrible is, you know, the smell of spring? That fresh, earthy smell that we have after winter? That's death. Decay. It comes from little microorganisms in the soil and in the leaves, breaking down dead plants and other things in the soil. And it releases that smell of damp soil and rot. Next time somebody tells you that spring is beautiful, it's the earth waking up, it's the season of rebirth, tell them to fuck off. Tell them that spring is the season of biological chaos, massive reproduction, disease spikes, unstable weather, animals competing for a place in the ecosystem, all happening at once. It's just chaotic death everywhere. Okay, that's spring. Well, I hope you enjoy spring, because it's coming, March 20th, 2026. So with that, I hope you have a good first couple days of spring until we see each other again on the podcast, okay? All right, folks. I've gone on long enough, too long, once again. I was hoping for a shorter episode, under an hour, but I failed you. I failed you. You were my brother. Annie, I failed you. I didn't do a podcast under an hour, Annie.
I hate you. I hate you for doing a podcast over an hour. Why did you make me listen to it?
Annie, you were the chosen one. I was supposed to make you a podcast under an hour, Annie.
I hate you.
All right. So listen, folks. Here's what I need to say to you before I wrap it up and say my special goodbye words to you. If you're a first-time listener, or you're new to the podcast, this may be your second episode or your third episode, and you're like, what's this all about? You can follow the podcast on Facebook, on Instagram. We have a Substack presence. We're on Twitter/X. We're on Blue Sky, although I rarely post on Blue Sky or Twitter/X. So you can find us on social media. We have a YouTube channel. You can follow us there. Our episodes post there automatically. Okay? So follow us in those places. And then I really enjoy hearing from you. I love getting feedback. So you can leave comments on Facebook. You can send me direct messages on Facebook or Instagram. You can email me and us at softservepodcast@gmail.com. If you want Stomping Jen to come back more regularly, you got to tell her. She don't listen to me.
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
Believe me, I have extended the podcast olive branch many a time, only to have it swatted away.
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
No, that's not it. Stomping Jen is busy. She has her own stuff going on. She will come back for an episode at some point. I'm being dramatic. Let me clarify. And I will say for the record, she was going to come on the show last week, but she and I had a scheduling conflict and we couldn't work it out.
I don't want to be an immortal lobster.
Okay. So let's see. You can leave messages on social media for me. You can email me. You can go to our website, softservepodcast.com. We have a contact form there. You can fill out and send a message. I am also playing around with having guest hosts on the show. So if you're interested in doing that or trying your hand at being on a podcast, let me know. I'll give you a shot. You have to deal with me, though, unfortunately. So if you listen to me and you're like, I don't want to be on a fucking podcast with that guy, then don't do it. Don't ask. But if you listen to me and you're like, you know what? I think I could deal with old Sawtooth for an hour or so. I'd like to be on his podcast. I'd like to mix it up with the old Sawtooth and Stomping Jen. Let me know. We'll have you on. Okay? All right. So, we've come to that time, folks. We've come to that time. It's time for me to say the special words to you I say at the end of every episode. And because this is spring, because this is the season of death and not the season of rebirth and renewal, I say to you, maybe for the last time, maybe for the final time, I speak these words into my microphone. Bye now.
This world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate. Those who have freedom will understand also its heavy responsibility. That all who are insensitive to the needs of others will learn charity, and that the sources, scourges of poverty, disease, and ignorance will be made disappear from the earth. And that in the goodness of time, all peoples will come to live together in a peace guaranteed by the binding force of mutual respect and love. I shall never cease to do what little I can to help the world advance along that road.